Hey Dartmouth, my name's Don Casler, and I'm one of the opinion editors here at the D. Welcome to the first in a series of roundtable discussions that we're going to be having this term regarding student life. So the first issue, an obvious one on a lot of people's minds, is the protests that happened Friday night at the Dimensions show. Now we've got three columnists here to debate this with me. I'm going to be moderating the discussion, and we're going to be talking honestly about what we think happened on Friday night, how it's being perceived on campus, and what we can do to deal with these very real issues that exist here at Dartmouth. So if each of you could introduce yourselves, that would be great.
My name's Jon Miller. I'm in the class of 2015 and a biology major.
I'm Lorelai Yang. I'm also 15. I'm a government major and a public policy minor, and I've been on staff since my freshman fall.
My name is Michelle Gil. I'm a 16, and I am, as of yet, undecided in my major.
First, what do we think about the validity of this protest, and what do we think about using prospective students as an audience to get the point across?
I think that the audience was completely inappropriate and counterproductive to what they wanted to accomplish. You are targeting students who are still in the process of considering Dartmouth and other schools. I think anyone in that audience who might be questioning their sexuality or who might identify with lesbian, gay students will now probably not come to Dartmouth, and the goals of that group are really going to be undermined by this protest that they had, because they'll essentially be driving away the students that would have sort of supported their point of view.
I do want to acknowledge the fact, though, that the administration has been unresponsive to a lot of student concerns over the past year, and that it has been very difficult to see substantive changes in administration policy become enacted because of the concerns that students have brought forth. So in that sense, I do see how this group might have felt that they had to do something very public and very difficult to ignore in order to get their opinions out there in a way that would force the administration to listen to them.
If you look at the YouTube video and you look at the description of it, they said, we're not trying to scare away prospies, we're trying to enact change, but why are you trying to enact change on people who don't even go to this school yet? And I think that if they really wanted to enact change and not just have this big public event, they would have tried to direct it towards the current students here.
I mean, I will say that I do agree that the choice of venue was completely inappropriate in terms of the fact that it really divided the support base for these issues. I think it's very clear that most Dartmouth students, if you walk up to them and ask, what do you think about racism and sexism and classism on this campus, they're not going to say, oh yeah, I think it's totally fine. They're not going to say that. But they're also not going to tell you that they think it's okay to bring those issues to light in a way that is in your face and that is more aggressive than it is constructive. And I think ultimately the problem that most people have with what happened at the Dimensions show isn't about the fact that these students brought very important issues to light. I think the problem is the way in which they did it was just not constructive and not helpful.
Do you think that the administration has tried to make meaningful or actionable change regarding these issues in the last year or the time that you've been here? We'll start with Jon.
I would say that they certainly have. They've done as much as they can. You have OPAL, you have the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equality, you have emission initiatives, you have talk of a possible forced, and that's the word that I would use for it, is a forced diversity class for all incoming students. You get emails from either President Folt or Dean Johnson whenever there's a bias incident. It's not a change that can come from the administration or things that the administration is going to force upon the student body, but more something that's going to come from within the student body itself. When, if you hear someone call someone else a faggot or something like that, calling them out and letting them know that's not acceptable. But I think that pouring more money or more effort into official offices or official programming is not the solution. I think the solution needs to come from the student body, and unfortunately that's something that's slow, and it's not going to come from forcing all of the incoming freshman class to go to a mandatory diversity class. And I can tell you that is true, because during my first year of college I attended Cornell, and they had that exact same program. They called it Tapestry, and it was very ineffectual. You had students had to swipe in with their student cards, and it was a graduation requirement, and people would swipe in, leave, go to the bathroom. No one really cared about it.
the fact is that Dartmouth has not made enough changes in terms of the way that the administration handles incidents. And that, I think, is the biggest problem. When we talk about the way that sexual assault is handled on campus, and when we talk about the way that bias incidents are handled, sure, the dean of the college will send out a blitz. Like, there was a bias incident this week. We're really disappointed and saddened that it happened. And then we just kind of sweep it under the rug and we try to move on. And that's not the way it should be. And it's the same with sexual assault. When the college's policies on sexual assault separate offenders from Hanover police, as much as they can, and second of all, the way that we deal with sexual assault often doesn't punish offenders for a long enough period of time. So those are both huge issues. The college can discourage actions by implementing stricter punishments for those who are found to violate college policies, and the fact is that hasn't been done properly.
I feel like there are a lot of punishments. I feel like the enforcement
isn't
isn't always there.
Exactly.
But I mean, I think it also goes like a two-way street. Like, if you want to talk about enforcing every single time someone breaks a rule, for instance, the protesters technically did break some of the rules in the handbook by entering a public event from the college and having like banners and signs and chanting. That's technically breaking
and violently entering, forcibly entering.
So now,
that
are
venue.
you saying they should punish them to the strictest ability? Because if you're going to punish one side, you have to punish everyone to the most. And I do agree that I feel that there could be a lot stronger enforcement of the rules. However, I feel like the avenues are there. We have the bias incidents response team. Having been on one of the floors that experienced a bias incident, I can tell you every single person was interviewed. All of us were investigated. So by saying you think they sweep it under the rug, I don't know if you've really experienced what people who have been close to the issue have dealt with. But if you don't know who is the perpetrator, how are you supposed to punish them in some of these instances that are anonymous?
The way that you don't necessarily have to punish perpetrators. You have to be public about the problems that you have on your campus. One of the ideas behind the protest is also that their prospective students have a right to know what is dysfunctional about the college as well as what is functional about it, right? And I think that that's very true. I think that for prospective students, the idea that the more information that you can give them, that they can make a more informed decision for that is very true. It's unfortunate that the way that prospective students got information about dysfunction at the college was done in the way that it was, but it is also, I think, important for prospective students to understand that Dartmouth, like any other institution, is imperfect.
So what do we think the administration's role here is then? Do they have a role in promoting dialogue, in creating solutions? What do you think?
We have the bias incidents response team. We have anonymous reporting. We have open discussions and forums. So I think while there's obviously always room for more improvement, I think the administration has done a good job of opening these avenues, and now it's up to the students to take advantage of these and to foster their own dialogue. And I think it's also important to remember that in the real world, all of these things do occur. You do have racism, homophobia, people are bigoted, and you're never going to be able to fully eradicate that, but we could always try.
I disagree with that position. I think that the administration has created forums and spaces for conversation, but those spaces and forums are mostly for people who are already in the choir. So they're people who already buy into the idea that homophobia, classism, racism, and all the other isms are unacceptable at this community. But the people who really need to get the message that it's not acceptable to be that way are the people who aren't going to voluntarily go to a forum where they'll hear about dealing with homophobia at Dartmouth. So with that said, I think that the administration needs to play a larger role in mainstreaming these conversations and in making it mandatory in some way, shape, or form for students to get sensitivity training and to really start conversations at a very basic ground level with everyone on campus. And tapestry at Cornell, and maybe something mandatory isn't necessarily the only way to go about it, but there is some way that the administration can definitely play a role in mainstreaming conversations and making people more aware of the fact that there are real world consequences for the actions and ideas that they personally hold if those actions and those ideas are not hospitable to the general public.
It's not necessarily the administration that needs to force this upon students or play a larger role, but maybe student groups. And if you could get people that are leaders within the student groups to voluntarily maybe take on initiatives, I think that would work much, much better than having, some hierarchy of administrators telling student groups what to do, or telling everyone, okay, you have to come to these programs. I also feel that of programs that they do have a lot that are specific to sexual assault. They have the Sexual Abuse Awareness Program. They have the Student and Presidential Committee on Sexual Assault. I think that they have done a lot of things to try to mainstream the dialogue, and maybe they haven't necessarily been as successful as they would like to be, or that we would like them to be. But I think that the change truly does have to come from within the student body, from student group leaders, rather than from the administration.
So on that note, what do we think that students can do to better support their peers? What can one of us do as part of our everyday routine to try to make meaningful change?
I think that one of the biggest things that people can do on an individual level is to call out others when they say things that are not in line with your personal beliefs. I think that I can't count the number of times where I've sat in on casual conversations and someone has said something that makes me uncomfortable, and maybe I'll hint at it and maybe I'll say, oh, well, that's a little interesting that you think that. But it's really difficult sometimes to call your peers out and to say, that's really not acceptable for you to say that. Or to tell someone straight up that makes me uncomfortable and I'm sorry that you think that, and it's making our community a net worse place to be. And I think that in the light of the Dimensions protest, I personally would really like to see people on this campus start to hold each other accountable for what we say in our everyday conversations and for the way that we treat each other.
I agree that a lot of it does have to come from an individual level. People have to be more conscientious of what they themselves are saying and the actions that they're taking, but also when you see something, say something. Stand up for when you hear someone use the word faggot or use derogatory language. You have to, at that moment, don't leave it or don't later vent to people about what you heard. At that moment, you have to stand up and say that's not appropriate. That's not the community that we really want to have here at Dartmouth.
I hold the same opinion that I think it needs to be an individual initiative, and just by virtue of it being individual, I think that it will be a very slow change and something that's hard to bring about. But if you want something to be long-lasting and to be a sincere change at Dartmouth, that's the only way it's going to happen, is if you have it on a student level rather than coming from the administration down. You need to have it from the student body coming up, not the other way around.
One last note, I also think it's really important for people to reach out to their peers. I think that sometimes you can see that someone is struggling and you can see that people are having problems with the way that Dartmouth operates. And I think that it's at those moments when we really can reach out to each other and let people know that they have allies and they have friends around them.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, everybody, this afternoon. I think this was just a productive conversation, and we look forward to more of these video roundtable discussions in the future. Thanks.